Welcome to the Cosmic Brew Podcast. My name is Ida Prahat, and I'm your host today. Today I have Brad Olson has joined us, Brian Singh and Miles Johnson, who are on the show monthly as we do what's going on in this world, galactic conversations and so forth. So Brad, welcome. And thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks everybody. I'm just still down in LA, just finishing up at the Conscious Life Expo and driving back up to Brian's neck of the woods up in northern Nevada all day today, right after this call. But really glad to connect with you guys and talk about all the stuff going on in the world today. And Miles, always a pleasure to connect with you. Maybe we can touch into the black goo a little bit too. I got a couple questions there. If,
oh my God.
You have time. Yeah.
Okay. Let me share with the audience. Today we'll delve into an era of unprecedented transformation that promises to redefine our future. We explore the monumental 500 billion Stargate AI infrastructure project, a venture that could revolutionize technology and reshape our nation's strategic capabilities. Alongside this, we'll examine the push toward energy independence and the assertion of national sovereignty, discussing how these twin forces might not only empower our country, but also alter the global balance of power. Finally, we'll tackle the inevitable challenges and risks that come with such rapid transformative change. Expect a conversation filled with mind-expanding insights, bold revelations, and thought-provoking perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Welcome to Cosmic Brew. Thank you again, guys. So I'll leave it up to you guys. I do have some questions, but I'll wait a while. You guys can, begin. Brian, if you want to begin the conversation, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Ida. It's great to see you, Miles and Brad. Conscious Life Expo sounds like it was a lot of fun this year. Perhaps next year I'll get to go. But aside from that, the golden era is a really hot topic right now that's been galvanized not only with the full disclosure movement efforts of everyone in our community and the greater community that people we have yet to meet, but also with the, Trump officially back in the presidency. My opinion is that the 2020 elections were stolen. There's a lot of evidence to this. He has always been the commander in chief. And the whole point was never about Trump. He's always been a disruptor that even the Republican Party, they never wanted, not the leadership at least. They wanted please clap Jeb Bush, right? He's always been a disruptor. It's really about my understanding, and this goes back to not only the Q jobs are there, but the whole Pizzagate stuff, that predates Q. That goes back to Seth Rich leaking the DNC servers, which he was killed at 3 a.m. in the morning on his driveway. Probably he was Clinton, okay? And the White Hats approached Trump in 2014, is what I'm told, to say we need a strong civilian leader who will be elected popularly and lawfully to then, once inaugurated, sign into law via a series of executive orders, whatever it takes for the military to be empowered to restore our constitutional republic of the United States of America. And at that point, one of the first executive orders he signed, people feel free to look it up, was enabling the seizure of property for anyone guilty of crimes against humanity. That's when we saw Hollywood start to clear out. A lot of politicians get body doubles, and there were already some before then. I always point to Putin changing it up from 2009 Putin to 2012 Putin. He went from KGB killer, cold, blue-eyed, steely, thin killer Putin to Winnie the Putin, and his own wife left him, saying that man's not my husband. That's on record. Okay. And since then, we've had this whole movie playing out in front of us. And what this really does is it clears the stage, especially with the moves that Trump is now making with the new administration, not just Trump, clearing out the USAID. Every time you hear them say USAID, just say CIA.
Yeah.
Okay. Cleaning out the Department of Education, the Treasury Department, replacing the chairman of the Federal Reserve. A lot of this stuff JFK was assassinated for, which is really the origins of the Q movement. Okay, is the white hats in the military who were pissed off when JFK had his head blown off 7 times in 7 ways from Sunday in Dallas. Okay, and with all this comes cleaning the house. You got to tear out the old moldy wood. Maybe some cases you got to tear down the whole structure, but that now paves the way to install all the things that we do want. And I'm not saying every step of the administration do I necessarily agree with. The Project Stargate AI one's a big one, but I think, and I like to think, that's more a case of keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And so I have a lot more to say on what we can expect in the days and years or weeks and months and years to come regarding making the new era, but the golden era. Right. I'd love to hear from Miles and Brad too.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Miles, Brad?
Well, Benjamin Fulford said that Trump was bumped off in a recent helicopter accident last week. So, Brad, over to you.
Yeah,
No
that's
pressure.
I do follow Ben Fulford. I think for the most part he does produce some pretty good stuff. But every once in a while there's a zinger in there, like Trump's dead and how come nobody else knows it but you? So what I think we always look for as researchers are connecting data points when you get confirming information from other sources. And so far I haven't seen any on the Trump helicopter crash from anybody else. So just another one. The other thing Ben Fulford always does is says that Leo Zagami is this Satanist that was trying to take down Trump. He loves Trump, and he lives here in California. He's one of our authors at CCC Publishing. So I think Fulford gives Zagami a bad rap, but they kind of had a falling out over different reasons. So there's no real reason to continue.
Well, I think the key to that is who's fake. I mean, was Netanyahu fake, which means he's taller, or is it the fake Trump, or which one of the fake Trumps? And are the two of them actually the right height?
One is the real Trump is much taller than the one body double. One way you can tell is when he's walking side, or when either the Trumps of those two, the real one or the one body double, are walking side by side.
Yeah,
exactly.
His son is 6'9". That's how tall I am. So I'm the same height as Barron Trump. And we had a discussion on a panel yesterday, Break Free from the Matrix. Sasha Stone was the moderator, and it moved over to how
Brad,
can
you able to get a word in edgeways?
I know.
Sorry,
I waited my turn.
There. I certainly wouldn't do that. I know the man. God bless it. Magnanimous Babylonian. God damn it. Sorry.
So we did talk about the possibility of clones and body doubles, doppelgangers, those very realistic masks we've seen people pull off that have facial features that can correspond to the face below it. But Sasha did not think that there were clones out there. And I was the one person on the panel that said, well, we should look at that. And if you guys know the testimony of Donald Marshall, who is in the cloning labs and gives very detailed discussions about some of these people and the rapid cloning technique and so forth. And then I offered my own perspective with Nassim Harriman. So 6 years ago, I was on a tour in Peru and Bolivia with him. And somebody said, did you know Nassim saw 8 identical clones in an underground base? So when I had a moment alone with him, I asked him, is it true that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, you saw 8 clones? He's like, oh yeah. And he described the whole situation, that he was there working on a project, and they went underground, and all of a sudden these 8 guys, exact same height, features, everything, age, just walked right out. It's like, wow, okay, cloning is real. And we were talking on the panel about Dolly the sheep. This is way back in the 1980s when they were cloning animals. So you don't think they have the technology today to do it, and would do it for world leaders that have assassination attempts? So there's supposedly 6 Trumps right now. I don't know if they're all clones. There's one, the original. Supposedly he spends most of his time in Cheyenne Mountain, and the one that goes and does the public appearances in case there's an assassination attempt or something, or maybe this helicopter crash. If they lose a clone, Trump will be right back. So maybe they can't go ahead and announce that
Can I
he's
speak
dead,
to the?
because he'd be right back on TV again the next day.
I want to speak to the
I like to
helicopter
say
crash too.
Camp David was always known for keeping clones of the
Right.
yeah.
On the
So-
sinister side, for sure. That's more the
And I definitely believe that there are clones. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think the
Why
whole
we
point,
would do
guys, is if they're going to make a clone, at least get the height right.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Well, that's
so
a body double. That's why
That
we
could be the
suspect.
body double.
Well, I would suspect that's a body double and not a clone. That's a paid actor who's very well, who's a lookalike, who's very
I
good
mean,
at
I
it.
think that's much more plausible. I mean, that was done with Montgomery. It was done with Churchill. It's not a new thing.
Right.
When there was a high risk of assassination, I think during the signing, that's why I think Trump didn't put his hand on the Bible, because he'd already signed in.
Exactly. And didn't
Hitler had a
Saddam
body
Hussein-
double, or now
Saddam
it's
Hussein-
I got some new information that he left Germany in late 1944 for Antarctica, that he knew the war was over, and why not just put in your doppelganger, let him get shot in the bunker, and let
Are you
everybody
talking about
believe
Hitler?
he's dead.
Are you
But
talking about-
Miles, the Adolf Hitler. So
Yeah.
this is way back in the
Well,
1940s.
what happened is he made it to Argentina, and
Oh, yeah.
that's why they inspired the Boys from Brazil film.
Right.
There was, maybe Brad's seen this. There's a very important photograph of Bush Sr., who is photographed with 2 old men in comfy chairs. You know, those lovely comfy chairs. And it's a cropped picture of Bush, and you've got I think his right or his left. You have the ear. That's one of the things you can't change. You have the
That's
ear.
right. The earlobe, where it connects to the head.
Yes.
You
No,
can't
somebody
quite
showed
master
me
the
that,
hanging
and
lobe.
God knows it's on a file somewhere. But that was interesting.
That's how you know it's a clone, when the ear
Right,
connects
attached-
right to the head, no
the
hanging.
attached earlobe.
But
Well,
Miles,
yeah.
I did want to bring up the black goo as it relates to cloning, because it wasn't that the reason why the black goo was originally deposited in South Tule Island near Antarctica, was that in the event the humans' numbers were low, that they could be rapidly cloned. And
The whole
wasn't-
point about Thule Island is it was a fueling station, a midway station, a bit like Ascension Island is a midway station to the Antarctic base. And there's talk that at the beginning of World War II, the ship that was blown up in the River Plate, it's not the Scharnhorst. I think it's a Scharnhorst. That had I might have got that wrong. It's the ship that was blown up, had to scuttle at the start of World War II, when the World War II got into business. They had they'd been raiding, they'd been sunken a lot of English ships, and quite a lot of the crew of those ships were retained almost on deck, pretty high up on the ship, and they had been somewhere very cold. So the ship had visited the German base. The basic point about this is the ship had visited the German base in Antarctica. Okay, there's nothing huge about that. The whole point of Thule Island was it was a processing facility for the extraterrestrial sentient oil that was intentionally landed which an awful lot of it ended up in South America, and that is where the Germans had been refining it from ore, like black coal, except there was an oil in the coal, which could be, and that is where they refined it, and they installed it into a large number of interlocking crates, like in a zip. Now, the guy who told me that was a Royal Marine who blew the place up after the British with 4 ships. One was a cargo vessel to take all these interlocking crates, tanks of sentient oil, and if you opened the seal, it would have a sort of a light brown surface, and if you put your finger in near it, it would want to come and join your finger. So the British got over 400 crates of that, put it into the cargo ship. The Royal Marines, the Special Boat Service, and the Special Air Service did an awful lot of the hard work in sorting out that underground lab. The crucial point about this was there's a strange kind of blue ice in the Antarctic, which they've never been able to get a sample of, because anytime they try to sample it, it disappears. And this stuff was all stored in this blue ice at -22. The problem is that when you take it to the surface and it's not at -22, it can do things. And so the British then, there were 2 destroyers or light cruisers. It's a different type of category of ship. And that was the real reason for the whole Falklands War. They then extracted all that stuff, blew the living daylights out of the place by pounding the whole place up with shells, and the actual base itself was destroyed. And this goes back to Alec Newald, who first published this story, and that goes to when he first talked about this, and that was on Nexus Magazine's Australian conference. And the researcher, David Griffin, he publicized that on one of our earliest recordings of the Amash project way back in 2011, I think. And it was crucial to what Alec Newald had been talking about, to give credit to where this sort of came from. Right. But the point was that the stuff that was in that Thule base, funny how they have one in the northern hemisphere and one in the southern hemisphere, that was where the Germans with special submarines which could take air conditioning so they could handle hot and cold weather. That was extracted by the British, brought to the labs here in England. In England, not in Wales or Scotland. They wanted to keep it in England, and then that's what they were mucking about with here, and that's another story.
But wasn't one of the purposes of obtaining the black goo, or perhaps its original purpose for being deposited there, have something to do with rapidly cloning, that it could be used?
What they were doing with it, this is one of the things about this is all in the public record. They were using young Marconi scientists to weaponize this.
Yeah.
And those young people, and this is a huge breach of protocol for any, they don't give a damn, or they were too stupid. They didn't understand what they were dealing with.
Are these the ones who all died, Miles, in horrible, gruesome ways?
And went crazy.
No, the point is that the sentient oil did not want to be weaponized.
Right.
It likes complex things, complex forms. And it wants to explore, and that's where there's other arguments about where we all come from in planets that combines with the salts and warm seas and creates organic life as such on the planet. And this is a problem with the creatures that we're fighting. They are not of the same organic creative life force. That's in crude oil. The Iranians found this, they couldn't refine a lot of their oil. So crude oil is where it is within the natural structure. And you mentioned, Brad, Nassim Haramein. He mentions about how that life is created in the toroidal aspects of the status of what we would call a planet. And he talks about a black hole at the center of all planets, which is, of course, maybe that's where the order of the black sun comes from. with the inner earth, and that's a whole pile of other things. But crucially, this extraterrestrial stuff is not of the same program as the stuff indigenous to this planet, and they'd fight. And that's another thing to talk about. But the point was that the Germans were working with this, and they wanted to weaponize it. The Brits got it, because you have to understand, we lost World War II, and the German DVD and their mucking about with life forms were found by the British, brought to the laboratories here in the UK, in England, and that they were making strange-looking humans, and they were making these things for the lunar base, for Britain's lunar base, you know, and all
these
this
chimeras, these
Farnborough and Boscombe Down and Portendown Labs and all that sort of stuff. And not too far away are the Rothschilds, and of course we had a whole lot of crop circles. Your Warminster big base, I mean, they're all over the bloody place around here.
But remember, after Marconi had all those mysterious deaths, as you pointed out, Brian, some died mysteriously, some went crazy, that they realized this is getting out of our hands, and it's going to take down the whole company, and that they just poured it in the drain after a while. They just let's get rid of this stuff.
The eyewitness on the civilian side, you had Marconi Defense, and then you had the Boots, I think Boots Labs on the civilian side. So they released this stuff to the civilians quarter. You know, what can you do with this?
Right.
And they absolutely just blew it on that.
Yeah. But then when they just poured it down the drain, then it got loose, because it
got loose, and it started changing insects in the sewers in London. And that is why when I did that show for Channel 4, they got permission. They got permission from the Secret Intelligence Service. You know that big building that James Bond blew up in London?
Yeah. MI6.
There's a large, just for dramatic effect, there's a big drain which goes into the...
Is that really where they dumped it? They dumped it right down that drain?
Yeah, they actually did it in Earl's Court.
Okay, it's a different drain.
Earl's Court is where there's a couple of cafes where if you wanted to have a chat with a couple of agents, you would go to Earl's Court. There's a cafe there. And that brings me into Marie Kayali. We did some shoots there, and of course she was part of a program, more agents flying around, and that's another story altogether. But that was in Earl's Court, and shall we say, a lot of interesting things happened from there. Earl's Court, you know, you've got to have your cafe or your restaurant somewhere, and there are certain buildings there that people visit. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy.
So what would you say is the end result after it got dumped down the drain in Earl's Court and basically started infecting other animals and insects?
Well, it reached other people, which started to become more advanced in their thinking. And some people have come forward on that, and their skin would change, and they were being modified. So that's in the population. This is why in the hospitals we have this thing, the heel prick test, and they're tracking. I think it's in the States, it's everywhere. So they get the mother's DNA and they get the child's DNA, and then they trace everybody in the whole population. And that's why kids are taken from school and taken into the program in British schools, and in Ireland. Now, the key about this is it's known that some of the meteors or whatever that landed in the southern hemisphere landed in Ireland. And then that brings you into the whole connection of the Tuatha De Dan, the Sidhe, all these indigenous reasons why Ireland and the Irish have been under so much attack from Rome and these other empires right across the planet, and why a lot of them are used in these programs. James Casbolt was connected to the tribe of Dan and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it plugs into a whole super soldier thing.
Susan Long, too, I believe. It's Selkie DNA. It's like this shape changer type. Like,
it's not the Celt. It's the
No, the Selkie.
It's the survivors of the Atlantis remodulation. Remember, we all know about Bimini, although we should know about Bimini.
Bimini Road under the water.
The everything going on in the Bermuda Triangle. But if you look across the Atlantic, there's a heck of a lot of stuff going off at the very, very edge of the so-called European or African continental plates. There's, and there's the reappearance occasionally of High Brazil, an island which literally materializes in the ocean. And there are other islands, other areas at the very edge. And some argue Atlantis is still there, active, but it's shielded in a different domain or reality. And occasionally that border slips, and it slips around Cuba, Florida, Tampa. Don't know what goes on there. And of course, extreme west of Ireland. And that's why there are I was on a ship which took me the roads in Ireland were so bad that the easiest way to get there was to go to England and then take a ship from Wales to the south of Ireland, down in Cork. And I was in a position where I saw some graffiti on the ship. So it's quite a long trip, 11 hours. And it said, the secret of UFOs lies in Cork Harbour. So that's way to south of Ireland. So this is where another lady that turned up at bases, she's called a Brazil, part of a gypsy type family. And they do an awful lot of work with the Ministry of Defense because they have a special way of making cement involving blood. And the reason for that is that the blood has got a lot of hemoglobin in it, and the hemoglobin makes the setting of the cement and concrete much stronger. It has special properties. And they already do that too. They're in the breeding farms of this lady was born in the breeding farms, the human baby farms of southern Africa. So this is all over the place.
Yeah, but you just very quickly, Miles. I remember. I don't know if it was Sarah Adams or one of this.
It could be.
Yeah, that had mentioned where there was blood in a lot of these elite homes, in the walls and the concrete. They use it to build and for other purposes too, energetically. So I'm not surprised. I mean, that's kind of fascinating. You just brought that up. I forgot about that. It's been a while since I've heard anything.
I bumped into Sarah Adams.
You've been to all these places, leaping around, Antarctica and all these sort of places. You must have seen a lot more than you're telling us now.
What'd you say, Brad, about Sarah Adams? I'm sorry.
Well, she's at this conference. I bumped into her briefly.
Yeah.
She was speaking here. She knows the conference producer, and he asked her back every year. But she was going out with Max Spears at the time of his passing. And all the reports were that he was infected with black goo because when he passed, it was coming out of his mouth. Miles, I think
just because something's black doesn't make it black goo. He had been getting poisoned. He was given a lot of poisons, which dreadfully I was given too. I think somebody didn't like me. I know that's too much for you, Brad. Almost.
No, it's not. But he was going to reveal something at that Polish conference. Do you know what he was going to talk about?
I know. I was there with him.
Yeah,
I was there with Matt. What happened was he became very close friends with a very attractive lady called Monica, and she was German, and she was going to publish an awful lot of stuff in German. And just by coincidence, Stuart Sverdlow happened to join them. And of course, Stuart's a very, very smart guy. He's done some very important work. And of course, that could bring some whole Montauk thing in there because his publicity agent was one of the organizers of that conference. So, I mean, it was all just a mix of, let's say, about getting books published. I'm sure they got it wrong. And there's a whole history behind that. And that is actually why Sarah doesn't have the highest loving, close, caring relationship with me, because Max had basically broken away from Sarah on the lead up to that conference, and she was not happy about that.
Do you think there was foul play in Max Spears' death?
Max Spears was assassinated, and they broke his programming. The programming that he was fundamentally programmed at with a place called Burnworthy Manor, which is in the south of England in the West country, where all the players in this, a lot of these super soldier stuff, a lot of the British soldiers, all the main characters that we've heard of, I'm not going to list them. They
like
were trained in Burnworthy Manor, and Max was crucially not trained in post-death recovery. And this goes back to what the British had been doing with their soldiers, which goes way back into the 1930s. And so the British were fighting, making their soldiers go beyond death. One of them was a guy called John Irwin with a U, and he wrote a whole book about that. So this is, I think it's very clear that they've been fighting in other dimensions and realms for quite a while, and we're just sort of picking up on it now in the end of the 20th century.
Why do you think Max was so dangerous to them that they had to take him out?
They didn't want to take him out. They wanted to get his secrets, which is why they brought him beyond death. This is crucial to the soldier called John Irwin. He wrote a book. His book's title is One Step Beyond. We're going back into the mid-50s here. That's when he was brought through that process. And he was part of the British super soldier program, but they didn't call it super soldiers. This is a recent term, advanced augmented soldiers. But I mean, we'll stick with super soldiers. A point about Irwin's book is One Step Beyond the 16. That's the name of his book. But One Step Beyond means they take you one step beyond death. So they shut your whole system down. They train you in that realm beyond death, then bring you back. And that's what they did with Max. If you listen to the final interview with Max, when he's gurgling and doing all that bloody stuff, he says he died. He was gone. And when they bring you back and they reanimate you, one of the things they do is, in order to get your system working again, is they get you to bounce on a trampoline. So Max they got the package. This is my personal analysis, okay? They got the package, they deprogrammed him, they found out what his programming was, whatever that is, and then they brought him back, reanimated him. And then that's when the video starts again, because the last hour or so of those interviews, they didn't have the video because he was dying. They were killing him with these special venoms that they use. I think it was African snake venom and scorpion venom, which brings you to the point where the body thinks, oh, I'm going to die. So then that gets you free of the body so they can control whatever they want to do.
Can I say something real quick, Miles? That video that I sent to you with Dr. Aman, you got to listen to that. They talk about, so all this stuff about, and it's kind of taking it away a little bit. I just need to make the statement. It's about the Greek history, the true writings of the original Bible of Jesus and Mary Magdalene and a lot of other information that is so worth listening to. These were not good people. Just letting you know that. Okay. And you got to listen to it. But they talk about the snake venom. It's part of a ritual that it takes you out. And then the high priestess comes and brings you back to life through using certain fluids and so forth, which I won't share on here. But it's so worth listening to. That guy is on point. He knows some things. I'll send it to you, Brad.
So
it's worth watching.
Essentially, Brad. So I didn't see that either. I was editing some chick I'd been talking to a couple of days ago. Brad, this woman with the glasses, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point was they made a mistake. The German asset there, Monica, they made a mistake. Whatever they'd done to him, it started to react, and he started spewing this stuff up all over the carpet. They didn't call any medical help, and when they did call the medical help, it was too late. And the police officer who was involved with that was later bumped off. And the BBC were so very interested in covering that. And they did that for, they did a 4 parts on a show and all that. The Polish weren't too happy about it. But Max then died for the second time. And then that night on the Saturday, they were doing a whole pile of rituals to try and get him back. And that's a whole nother story. And that's when Stuart Sverdlow's wife put a message on his website, on Stuart's website, that a British researcher, i.e. me, was deluded in thinking that they were trying to bring Max back. Now, the point about it is I was on a bloody train going back to Wiltshire when all this was happening. So how did Stuart Sverdlow know that they were trying to recover him back from being dead for the second time? You know what I mean? James Bond only lives twice, for God's sake, Brad.
I think
But,
there
I mean,
was
Max Weir,
outrage.
God help him, he had to die twice, you know. I shouldn't say that. That's mocking.
There was
It's very
outrage
traumatic
about
for
Mr. Sverdlow's not coming.
Vanessa. Sorry, Ida.
And the
No,
near-death
it's okay.
experience thing, that seems to feature very prominently in these secret space programs and enhancing psychic abilities and taking people to the edge of death so that they achieve astral projection and that whole Wizard of Oz over the rainbow type programming.
Brian, I'll be glad. I just sent it to Brad, and I'll send it to you. And before you go into like thinking that the guy that does the lecture is actually a not a historian, I forgot what it's called, but basically he reads original Greek. And any scholar or any religious figure that's tried to, or like priest or people that are have the background of the history of the Bible and Jesus and all that, won't go up against them because they can't. Meaning they've tried to find people like other scholars to debate with him, and they won't, because they know that and he was actually kicked out of university. He was a professor because he was bringing forward information that has not been released or exposed to humanity. Most of us cannot read old ancient Greek, right? Very few. So I'll send it to you. Have a look at it. It's worth watching. But what's fascinating is because Miles is mentioning about this cobra venom, snake venom. That is a common ritual that they do, where they'll use that and take you out of yourself and then bring you back.
Well, I'm mentioning it because they used similar poisons on me when they tried to bump me off at Dublin Airport.
Yeah,
Do they have a paralytic?
There are some people who happen to be very rude. I think Sasha might use that term. Very rude, that they would want to sort of discontinue my existence in this realm. But that even Simon Parks got that news, and he explained what toxins they had by touch. And when you go to Ireland, Brad, you've got to be very, very careful. The old ladies, little old ladies who are going to follow you around, just aren't quite so little old nice ladies.
So, Miles, may I ask, was it like a polonium type poisoning or like heavy metals? And then did it have a paralytic?
They had a sort of a makeup case. Actually, I've got a sort of a case here. Over there. It was very like this. And it fitted into the overhead luggage. The first thing is that when you fly, as cheap as I try to fly, being bumped up to first class, and oh, that's nice, meant that these two old ladies were sitting beside me, and they kept looking at me. And I've got that Greek God look. Women want to really have a statuesque. And they kept staring at me. But the key to it is that they had placed, actually, it's a very good way of locking your briefcase. They'd been tampering with my laptop, and they'd put the zip, the interlocking zip. It has a little tab to interlock, and they'd managed to clip that interlock onto the strap. of the holding strap. So with your zip round that, nobody can open your laptop. So I knew something had happened with the laptop. But what they'd done was they had a case a bit like this, a sort of a squarish case, and they had a handle on it like this, but you can't see that. Anyway, this was pushed in front of my laptop. So what happened was when we landed, the two old ladies were going to go up and touch and go and take their case out. And this young guy who was with the two old ladies slapped their hand down. So, of course, me being a gentleman of high breeding and culture, took the case out. And that got both hands on each side, took that out. And that's how they transferred the poison. This guy took the case very gingerly away and walked away with it. 36 hours later, this is when I was on a case to see some of the Irish contactees and abductees and things. A very good team there. And we held a conference there in 2017. And after 36 hours, I started getting really, really itchy and really, so cutting to the chase, back in London, I was really getting itchy, as if I was really going mad. Then I could see these red welts appearing all over my hands, cutting, and it went crazy. So I managed to get back home, went to the doctor, by which time it was completely all over. And, my doctor sort of said, I'm about to die. I'm about to, pop. You see, my doctors are very, very caring and nice, close people. He said, we've seen this sort of thing before. We don't know what causes it, but if it reaches your throat, go to A&E, by which time it would be too late. So anyway, that didn't work. And that's when Simon Parkes got word that it was an assassination attempt. And they knew what had happened, and they put the alert out on that. But it was,
So how did you clear it up, Miles? How did you get it cleared up?
He didn't get dosed hard enough.
But that's when the poisons were African snake venom and African death. It was African death adder venom and African scorpion venom. I may have got
it can be absorbed through the skin.
It absorbed through my skin. That was a way of slow acting poison, and it caused me.
Your skin is the biggest. Your skin. It's not actually your lymphatic system is, but your skin is second.
That was because there was a temple, the Temple of Set in California.
Michael Aquino.
Mad as hell that I'd identified that Max was assassinated. And they were not talking about a fine gentleman called Aquino. It was a different Temple of Set. And I know that because there was a very good British, good British director. He shot some films in the States. He shot a very good film, used an awful lot of people, and he was a classic Brit, spoke with a really good British accent, or whatever. And he explained to me that the Temple of Set in California were going to bump me off, and for that they bumped him off. So he got taken out with 3 brain tumors. A guy called Willie Marshall, a very dear guy, and I think he lasted about 9 months. So this is a very deadly game, and I've been very fortunate to still manage to get this far. But quite a few people are taken out. Max was taken out. I think the Polish policeman who came with the ambulance to check Max out when he was throwing up all over the place with this black stuff. Oh, it's okay, Max. It's fine. Just sit on the sofa. You may be throwing your guts out with this black stuff, whatever it was. Some people say it was a type of poison from if there's a very, very venomously deadly rat poison that they can give you. And if you do that, you will vomit this stuff because your blood coagulates, and it's very awful stuff. But they did not want Max dead. Max died twice. He was going to come back for the 3rd time, but he saw what was going on, according to the Polish people. according to the Polish analysts. But why did Stuart Sverdlow know? Why did Sarah know the toxins that were inside him? Because she must have known that. And she said that all on stage that following summer. Anyway, that was that.
Yeah, I don't trust either one of them. I'll tell you that right now, and I don't have a problem saying that.
Well, Brad,
Anyway.
I want to hear what you've got to say because you're sitting there.
Yeah.
Well, as far as Max Spears and Sarah Adams' involvement, she's always claimed, "Oh, we were in love, and I would never hurt him, and I get blamed for it." But
well, I will
he said,
say,
she said, right?
I mean, they were very. Max, when Max first went on stage, they were very, very nervous here in a little country hall here in the middle of crop circle country. I mean, you can't get a more wonderful place. Wiltshire, Honey Street, the Barge Inn with the art, the crop circles is growing up all over the place. But I mean, I'm sure there's no coincidence that there's a major Rothschild castle there or house and military exercises, an interdimensional portal under the East Fields, all that sort of stuff. Just as you would expect in any part of the dear old English countryside.
Yeah.
But the photographs.
Well, there are some walking around, actually part of the full disclosure, that were presenters there that claimed that they had something to do with taking Max out. They were.
Well, I will say this: that every photograph you see with Max and Sarah, Max is submissive. Sarah's in charge, and they broke up. Max broke up before that conference.
I'm sorry?
Max broke away from Sarah before that conference, a good 3 months, and he told me, "Man, just leave Sarah alone. I'll deal with that." And then
I think they were using her, and I know some things that I won't share on this, but
they're all part of the British super soldier lot at Burnworthy Manor. So if somebody's trained these people, there's a lot of other ones involved. So I mean, this is part of the human, as the MOD says and the Ministry of Defense says on their own website, human augmentation program.
It's real, Brad.
Oh, it is real. It is real.
I was left at the hospital for 2 days when I was born, and they put AI through it in my eye, and it grew like fiber optics throughout my entire body.
Well, so
they augment you when you come in.
That's the next topic I'd like to explore, because that's very interesting.
When I look at the light, I can see the wiring and everything. Although I have a soul, so don't misunderstand me. I'm a Pleiadian. That's what I am.
We can all be living beings, but this stuff has a way of infecting into us, and it's this new life form, such as the graphene oxide and these nanobots, which have a way of getting into a living system, reassembling themselves, and then they become a new kind of parasite within us. And I wonder, Miles, how much the black goo might have a part of this too, because it takes on the same kind of personality and prototype of how the nanobots in this graphene oxide are now inside of a living organism and sort of taking over, or at least doing its own thing and becoming its own species within you, just like a regular parasite would. How much has the black goo been weaponized, and can we make the connection that perhaps it is in the graphene oxide or the nanobots, if there is a connection there in your eyes?
Well, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about is 10 years old, right? I was given privy information that the scented oil had been separated. Large quantities of this stuff had been given or distributed to a large number, about 8 English military bases. And the word I got was that some of the base commanders were not informed of what was happening on their base. And 1 or 2 of them did a thing called "give a damn about what the hell's happening on my base," and they suffered road accidents. One of the types of ways that they got rid of them was that they would have a car crash because their car went into a full speed, And certainly that wouldn't have happened to anybody driving through Paris,
Right.
going into a tunnel. No.
Never
Brad,
heard that
I told you
before.
this couldn't have happened. Listen, Brad, what is it? I've told you it couldn't possibly have happened, because I believe everything written in the British newspapers. But the point is, it certainly didn't happen to me when I was driving up the M11 or the M3. I got this V2K thing, Miles. You are about to die.
Wow.
And they did that to the old cruise control. But the point is, where are we? I'm reveling in the glory of not being bumped off. So that is crucial. Now, one of the biggest bases in Britain is Farnborough. It's where Marconi Defence, it's where they developed the Concorde, did a whole lot of wind tunnel tests there. Farnborough is just outside London, West London. There's a number of bases there. There's a wonderful house called Minley Manor, and that's got lots of barbed wire, and it's got little signs saying, deadly force will be used. You know, you're walking your dog, there's a barbed wire fence. If the dog goes into the forest, bang. Well, not quite. But the point is, that is where Marconi Defence was accessed by the Greys way back in April 1974. There were landings in Rendlesham Forest and the forest there at Farnborough in 1977. You know, there were the whole pile of landing stuff in Rendlesham, and then before the 1980 thing. So the base there, Kinetic, which is now called Kinetic, speeding on, it was DARPA. There's a whole defense organization there of stuff, and they have the British Space Expo is held at Farnborough. Of course, it's now moving on to other. So British Defence are now having to gear up and having an awful lot of launch sites in Britain. I think there's 4 launch sites for small satellites about the size of this mug. So lots of that sort of kind of stuff happening. One of the space launch sites is RAF St. Morgan with an MAW, and that was involved with SSP and all that sort of stuff involving other bases. We don't need to go into all that sort of stuff. But the point is, the British no defense significance means that the British are embedded with ETs in the bases. Transgenic science is going on. And that's where the Pirbright Institute is registered as having the patent to one of the vaccines that they were using. So, all of this is embedded. So what they have done with the sentient oil in British bases across the UK or England is obvious. This has been put into military charge for military use, and they haven't been sitting on their hands for the last 25 or 30 years. They have obviously taken large quantities of this material, and they have got over the Marconi deaths, which you're talking way back 80. When the hell was the Marconi, the Falklands War? That's a hell of a long time. Things have moved on, and it's clearly been weaponized. We've all been infected with this stuff. It's a weapon, a transhumanization weapon. And thanks to the research of Bob Osborne down in Zena in Cornwall, the Fabian agenda is identical. This is me talking. The Fabian agenda of transhumanization is identical to the Draco invasion, Nebru, whatever races you want to call it, agenda. We are in a human extinction event situation, and we are in trouble. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you told me when we were chatting about a year and a half ago, Miles, that it's this Fabian group, these globalists that are behind the depopulation agenda and are also working on infecting us in all these different ways. And Ida, what you described with this kind of control system throughout your body, it does sound very similar to other 21st century afflictions, such as Morgellons, such as all the diseases that are coming out from the Jabberdew that are being put into the human body and animals too, are also showing signs of these infections. That it's
Well-
I think it's getting out of hand, and it's going to really affect the human race sooner or later, probably sooner.
I think, Brad, it is
Can
in.
I respond to that for a moment,
absolutely.
please, Miles? So
Sorry?
I met with Simon Parks because I've seen this thing in my eye my entire life.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you, and I know for sure, is anybody that's been using the Super Soldier program has AI running through their body. You would not be able to battle multidimensionally and go into these parallel timelines and energy spaces without having the AI within you.
This is absolutely crucial. What John Urban was telling me. A lot of the stuff he told. John Urban, remember, was interviewed by Sean Stone.
Yeah.
Why don't you have a good chat with Sean Stone? He came over to Newcastle and he did that. Sorry.
The from what Simon Parks explained to me, it's called a scorpion implant, and it's basically was to control me. I broke programming when I had a full-blown Kundalini activation. All the information came flooding in. I was seeing multidimensionally. I was battling multidimensionally. I mean, I have a lot of memory, which I just began starting with Miles. We did one episode. We'll be doing more, but I have a lot of information that I can share. But what I will say is, since I broke the programming, it doesn't have the control over me in that way anymore. Like I'm not saying that I'm exempt. I think as long as you're in the 3D realm, while we're multidimensional beings, we have to be mindful at every turn when we start having either negative thought forms or odd thoughts that we know are not our own. You have to be able to override the programming. And I've done a lot of that and a lot of healing. So I was left at the hospital. They put the AI implant, and I believe, and Max Spears actually spoke this too. I had somebody read me that was able to look in me and said that she saw what looked like a spiral of lights going around me, and I thought it was interesting when she said that, because Max had said that he made sure that he had this implant inside him prior to coming in, so that able to reveal the information to do what his mission was, to be able to share information and to allow his DNA to activate when the time came for him to move into his mission. So, I mean, I'm still putting pieces together, and I surely don't have, all the information, but I know a lot of things, and I don't feel like they tried to take me out of my body and put my soul into another body, and I was able to escape the sacrifice, offering me up to Moloch. I was able to escape it and make it back to this body, and I'm very thankful for that. So I don't think it's nanotechnology or whatever. I think it's a specific type of AI that they use in order to augment those that are being used in these types of projects and programs. Do I think everybody has it? No. But what I do think is everybody that's been used in Super Soldier, because I don't think everybody's been used in the Super Soldier program that people that are coming forward claiming. That's just my personal opinion. And I think a lot of it's sensationalized. I don't think it's the way a lot of people explain it, but that's just my personal opinion, and that doesn't make me right. Anyways, so it allows you to go into multidimensional. And actually, Dr. Amir, when we had him on, and you haven't met him yet, Brad, I'd love to have you come back when we have Dr. Amir come back, because the guy is really amazing. And he had said that he agreed that it was true that if you've been using the Super Soldier program, you are absolutely augmented with AI. So there are a lot of people on this planet that are,
Well, can you define that, Ada? Because when most people hear AI, they think, oh, I'll just get on Chat GPT and have them write my bio. That's one version of AI, but you're talking about infecting your body.
Yeah, I think that's a great, we, as Dr. Amir and I don't think AI is like all horrible. That's just my personal opinion. We can use it for good to help us with our own creative expression, as well as learn knowledge and so forth. I don't have a problem with AI. What I have a problem with is those that control it from a certain authority or power, that they use it to be harmful and hurtful to humanity. But AI can be very beneficial to humanity as well. And there's also sentient AI. There's not just AI that's hurtful and harmful. I mean, from my understanding, and I listened to Win Keach, Simon Parks, oh God, my mind's going blank. What's his name? Win Keach, Simon Parks, and I know you know who I'm talking about, and I can't think of his name. Another person. It was a round table, and Win Keach, I don't know if you're familiar with Win Keach, but shout out to Win. I absolutely adore him. He mentioned about how the Pleiadians were augmented with AI, or took on AI as part of their bio when they were battling with the Draco reptilians. So when the Dracos took over Lyra, and then all the Lyrans that went to different star systems as refugees to build their lives or whatever, they some took on AI. It was part of their bio, and I'm still not clear about why that happened, but I think the Lyran culture or nation or peoples were very peaceful, and I think they weren't prepared to go up against these Draco, and I think somehow they came across the technology once the refugees, after the big demolishing of Lyra, they possibly got a hold of technology that could help enhance their bio, their body, in order to be able to battle these people. Now, I don't know, or these Dracos, or these reptilians, but that's not for sure. That's just my own thought. I did take a course with Debbie Solaris, and I think she was there with you as well. Debbie Solaris, are you familiar with Debbie, Brad?
No, I'm not sure I am.
Debbie Solaris, she's with well, I got my Akashic record. Basically, I got certified, and you can't see it because of the thing, but doing Akashic records readings, although I've chosen not to do that because I think that, it's just not my thing. I'll just say that. But I did record a lot of the information that I got from her course, and I have tons of information here, and not all of it. I mean, I intuit a lot of things. I don't just go by what I read or what people say. I have a way that I can do that and find if information is true or correct or not. And sometimes it can be 70% true, and there's something, there's some misinformation in there. So, but anyways, I think we wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't have been, those that are using the projects and programs or in these super soldier programs, you wouldn't be able to enter into the spaces or battle without having what I would say is somewhat of an AI armor, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I
Miles, what were you saying about John Irwin? I'm kind of fascinated with that subject. Is he still alive?
John Irwin is still alive, and I'm going to say something. Ida is an excellent example of a bouncing, in charge survivor, no mucking about woman who has had all these experiences, and she's pushed through.
Yeah.
And I interviewed a number of people who had been abducted. They were in the bases, and they had been able to say, well, they were able to merge into a situation where at will they could go anywhere in the universes. They could walk past the guys, they got the gray costumes they'd wear when they abduct you, and she could do what the hell she wanted. She was overwhelmed. They couldn't do anything to stop her. So that is an example that we are being somehow enhanced by something, and we're winning. We're getting through. I interviewed somebody who'd moved from the States into Uruguay, no connections with anything there, and she could do with whatever she wanted. That's one of the things that Erwin was able to do.
I appreciate that comment, Miles.
He was able to go to any of the realms where his DNA had come from. He was able to go into somebody in the time when humans hunted dinosaurs and experience it from somebody there. Go inside and experience a human, wherever that was, and experience all that. You know, they would hunt dinosaurs, and dinosaurs would hunt humans.
I don't do it anymore, but Brad, I would be able to, if I position myself, I could position myself and close my eyes and go into a meditative state and literally become your body and looking out your eyes. I could do that. I don't do it anymore because I feel like it's intrusive and we shouldn't be doing that, right? I think there's a certain responsibility that we have to have as being, if I'm really the person that I know myself to be, which I believe to be a loving, kind, and compassionate person, although I know that I have lived quite auspicious lifetimes in prior lives. I have memory of at least 4 of them. This lifetime is for me to correct those things and to move out of my karma into my dharma. That's my intention. And for whatever time I'm here, and we were talking about near-death experiences, part of my programming was suicide. And I had taken a bunch of pills and I said, God, I'm done now. I'm laying on the couch. I don't know if I'm going to get up, but I'm laying down. And I laid down and I literally went into this other space-time dimension. And it was like I was walking and I just went whoosh, and passed through this wall of energy. And I could see mountains in front of me, a lake, seeing footprints of my own in the sand, not Jesus. And my hand, everything faded out, my entire body. I realized I had no hands, no body, nothing. And I thought to myself, so we are definitely conscious when we die. You leave the body, you're still very conscious. And when I realized I had no hands, no body, I'm looking, I said, God, if you're real, show me. And I heard 2 words, I am. And I woke up. I didn't have to get my stomach pumped. I didn't have to be rushed to the hospital. None of that. And I'm like, God spoke to me in a dream. And of course, I would have pockets of times. Like I've always known there was something very different about me my whole life. And I would question things and challenge authority. And nobody in my family liked that, nor did school or wherever else. And I actually, the last grade I completed was 6th grade. And I'm a pretty intelligent person. I consider myself to be. I mean, I don't have university certificates and so forth, but I have heart intelligence and I learn what I need to for myself, for my own growth. But anyways, there was a reason I was telling you all that. Yeah, there are things that I'm able to do that I don't. I think that, for instance, there are other people in the that have been using these projects and programs, and I understand that I was deactivated. And so I was lifted off my couch and I felt this rolling going up and down my body because I wasn't just, when I had my full-blown Kundalini, I wasn't just 5th dimension. I was up probably 7th or 8th dimension. I mean, I was seeing a lot of things and I was completely magnetic. Laura Eisenhower did a reading on me. She said, I've done over 1,000 readings and I've never seen anybody's cards fall like this. She said, you're pure light. And that's when I got attacked. Because when you have an awakening, like when you light up and you pull all your DNA, your light into your body, it causes this energetic rift, and the gatekeepers all see you. And that's when the targeting happens, at least for me. And I was writing a book called Little Sisters Lost Soul. I'd love to talk to you about that and completing my book and possibly publishing with you, but at a later time.
Let's speak to that. David Purcell, who's also having secret space program, Super Soldier Recalls. Once he was starting to get activated within the last 2 years, he's come under a lot of psychic attack. And it seems like in the past, the other side they'd have the resources to go after all the Max Spearses and the James Casbolts and the Andy Piros.
Mhm.
And now that ability seems to be fading away as more people are coming out with detailed recalls. And that kind of leads us into this new, the golden era, the golden age. And with that has to come disclosure, because as Penny Bradley, she was speaking at our conference last July about, I think it was a 1951 Invention Secrecy Act, something like that, which empowers all parts of the US government, especially the military, to basically remove, suppress, and neutralize all technologies that could have a military impact upon our society. And as that's being revealed, we're going to have free energy, medical beds, anti-gravity, portal technology, and a lot of us awakening our abilities without getting crammed back down the way
Well,
some.
I'd like to just respond to that quickly, and then I'll be quiet. First off, yeah, let's start talking because we're in our second hour, and I want to make sure we at least have some discussion around what the topic of the show is. But also, I can tell you this, that I know this for sure, and you guys remember me telling you this. Once you activate and you light up and you pull the light into your body, if you do not acquiesce with those that are the gatekeepers, and I won't mention names, and I know this for sure, if you do not acquiesce and allow them to manipulate and control you and use them to their advantage, you think that you're doing something great, right? You think you're doing, like, there's all these people that have come forward and now they're doing courses and selling books and this and that. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying there's a good handful or two that have acquiesced, and I know this. And those that, as Dr. Amir mentioned, said that people that truly would not acquiesce or give their power over or work with these powers that be are the ones that are really the ones that are doing the greatest work on this planet, right? Those of us like Penny Bradley that can't get herself up because she's bringing so much information that is challenging to the status quo, if you will, and or all this hoopla and sensationalized super soldier stuff and the real things that happened are not being taken seriously to the people. So I was one of them that was not going to acquiesce. Therefore, I got what I got. So it wasn't without consequence, but I'll tell you this, I'm very thankful where I'm at in my life right now. And I live, as I've said many times, on a humble income, and I'm able to reach hearts and minds and help people to the best of my ability, rather than having to be this superstar all over the, whatever. That's just my thought. Right. So those people, like what you're saying, Brian, that are being pushed back down, those are, like it happened to me. They don't want people freeing themselves from this matrix grid system. They want us to be in our minds and constantly at battle with ourselves. And it's a war over our minds. And that's for sure. Would you agree with that, Brad, Miles?
Well,
Brian?
it very much is a war for our minds. I mean, that's what it's all coming down to. And now that we're seeing, if we can go back to the original topic, what's going on in Washington, D.C. with the Doge looking into all this wasteful spending. Now they're going to open the hood in the Pentagon, and it's really going to get bad. So
they need to. They need to, because that's who
absolutely
they
need
sent
to.
out
That's
to
what
meet
NATO is. NATO is the greatest drug. Just look at the movie Catch-22. NATO TIR containers going all over the world without anybody looking at what's going on. And NATO has got its, well, enough said. But I think the whole point about all this, Ida, is that you have survived it. You've got past it. And we have the power to do that.
Yes.
They're using our consciousness against us, so we can de-exist them, to use a Tom Bearden term, or unhappen these enemies. We can de-exist them, make them just fall to dust and just fall away.
Sure.
That's why they're using us and fear to inhibit our consciousness. When we are better than that, we can rise above that. We have the power to do that.
I think when humanity loses the fear and they let go of their religious dogma, I believe, this is just my personal opinion, I think religion is the biggest mind control.
But that's what it's there for. That's why if you disagreed with them, you'd be burned at the stake. You know, there'll be mild incentives for you not to, you know.
But
now,
when people
I want to get back
fear of death, you know, when you get to that point where you don't even like, I don't fear death. And there was a time when I welcomed it because I was so fed up with all the nonsense. But I worked through, I was able to heal. I got past all that and, you know, realized that I have some value to bring to humanity, even if it's simply simple things like this, because we think it needs to be some grand thing. Even being involved with Brian and being able to help create a platform or place where people feel safe and know that they won't be judged. They can share their stories and, you know, meet like-minded, like-hearted people. We're the ones that have to make the change. I'm definitely not waiting on any government to do anything or president. That's just my personal. I am happy.
I want to get back to that. Earlier, we began this conversation. Miles mentioned Benjamin Fulford and that helicopter crash.
Yeah,
I have a very different analysis on that. Because a lot of people are like, well, planes are dropping out of the air, helicopter crashes are happening. It's kind of like you got to take them on an individual basis. The Philadelphia one is the most sketchy. But the one with the Black Hawk helicopter, everything, like when you listen to the air traffic control and you see the replay of the flight radar, what it looks like is that Black Hawk pilot, whoever it was, some people say it was a remote control thing. I don't think so. I think it was the pilot was a female pilot who was literally a direct assistant to the Biden administration, has multiple photos of her at the White House, literally standing next to Biden. It seems like she was ignoring air traffic control to tell her to avoid planes around the Potomac River. She tried to play chicken with 2 airplanes before she finally hit the third. If there was a Trump even body double on that Black Hawk, I don't think that the Black Hawk would be flying erratically with a bad pilot. So I think that it's one of those bad zingers or, you know, bad pieces of sushi that Benjamin got fed. Although I like most of his stuff.
Well, I think Ben isn't stupid and he gets information and he's been around the business for a very long time. So what would send him into that particular thing? I mean, I still think when Netanyahu and Trump couldn't possibly be the same size. And then again, is that Netanyahu?
Exactly. Netanyahu should be, from all reports, is very scared right now. Because in terms of the golden age, a lot of it has been cleaning up the United States, the UK, but the final, I guess, 3 really right now.
The UK is not being cleaned up. We're in a lot of trouble here. Big time.
Well, it would get around to it after America, but I think the UK, and then next on the list is Switzerland because of the Octagon Group and Lake Geneva and all that, and then after that it would be Ukraine and finally Israel, because those are the 2 bases.
Saving Israel for last.
The
the modern day Khazarian mafia.
I always think that Israel is there as a expendable. Anybody in Israel is expendable for the cabal. The cabal.
The Jabberoonies, they showed that already.
But I mean, this is speculation.
Right. I'd agree.
Well, I'm very interested to hear. I mean, have you been to Antarctica? What have you seen there, and what about the main? I mean, I've interviewed a guy called Ecker, but also in my very young years, there was a British Antarctic survey guy who took some very strange photographs of black energy weapons of some kind, which he took. He showed them to us at my school. And he gave us the slides, these color slides that he had taken. We're going back 1972 or whatever. It's a long time ago in my geography class. And when he went back to Antarctica, he had an accident within 24 hours. I mean, is there anything you picked up there when you were walking about taking pictures?
So where I went was just the Palmer Peninsula, where most boat traffic and cruise ships go. I was on a sailboat, and I went to half a dozen bases, and every time I went to one of the research stations, I'd ask the same questions. Somebody would speak to me and could speak English. I'd ask them, do you know anything about the supposed 3 large motherships under the ice and nicknamed Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria? No, we haven't heard of that. Have you heard of any antediluvian civilization or artifacts or giants being pulled out under the ice? No, never heard that. Any UFO or paranormal activity to speak of? And routinely the answer was always no. And it's not to say that they were hiding. It's just that the people that work there are very compartmentalized into whatever research study they're working on. And that's where most of the people on the bases are. They're just out of college, research students studying the ice fish. And that's all they do every day. They'll catch a fish and see if it's malnourished, how many eggs it's got. So they have nothing to do with and no idea about any of this stuff. However, I did find some things that I wasn't expecting. And there was an Argentinian base that had reported a UFO sighting just a few weeks before we were at another Argentinian base. And the guy finally told us that this was in their interdepartmental banter, that this other base called Belgrano 2 had a UFO sighting, which is not too far away from the Nazi New Schwabenland claim. And Miles, I got to tell you, one thing that was really remarkable when I was preparing for this trip and I was going over old maps and stuff, including during the Cold War era, I was looking at the bases that were there during the Cold Wars, and West Germany flag was on the German bases in New Schwabenland. So in fact, they never left that area. And
what about Concordia base, the French-Italian base?
I'm not too aware of what was going on there. What do you know about it?
Well, Concordia was taken out for quite some time. They lost all their antennas. Everything was fried because they were doing research into energy that they were bouncing off the inner part of the things. Maybe they picked up on the early on the tests, and that base. I mean, like a lot of these places, once you lose everything, you can't talk to anybody. They were lucky to survive.
Wow.
It's Concordia base. It's the French-Italian one.
Okay.
That's 10 years ago.
Interesting. I'll have to look into that, because certainly your life is in danger if things go wrong. If your life support system, your base runs out of fuel or energy for heating, food, of course, everything needs to be brought in. So you're screwed if things go bad, because it could be days or weeks before a recovery team can even get there. So that's really interesting that they had that experience. I've since talked to Brian S., who is one of Linda Moulton Howe's whistleblowers, and he had his experience down there doing over 200 flights almost for a decade, and the things that he saw. So he was the one who dropped off those scientists in there's an area called the Rockefeller Plateau. Funny they get the naming rights. Rothschild Island. That's what Dr. Michael Sala said. Hey, if you're going down the Palmer Peninsula, try to get to Rothschild Island. We never got nearly that far.
Well,
apparently they have a harp array.
I know time is short, so I'll butt in. A friend of mine, I've had 2 experiences with people who've worked in Antarctica. One was I needed some lights to hold lighting, stage lights up, and it just so happened that in Portsmouth somebody had these lights, and he volunteered that he worked in Antarctica as an electrician. Another friend of mine also knew an electrician, and he's from Northern Ireland.
Oh, okay, another guy.
And he worked in a place called the Cathedral. He'd been in what Linda Howe's, he claims to have been in what Linda Howe's whistleblower was, and the buzzword for that facility is called the Cathedral. And he was rewiring facilities there, putting the electrics in. So I think Brad's lost sort of faded slightly.
No, I heard what you said.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it would be interesting. It would be interesting if you got any kind of a buzzword. If you says how's work in the cathedral these days,
uh-huh.
and that would see if if anybody sort of twigs on that.
So my line of research lately is underneath the ice and what the Nazis knew and found out. So I'm working on a new book called Secrets of Antarctica, and we'll also have a brand new Antarctica conference presentation in 2026. And I'm working with this research assistant who speaks fluent German. He's a Dutchman, and he's also been going over a lot of material that the KGB got out of Nazi Germany at the very tail end of the war, including these maps that were printed for all the U-boat captains in 1945, giving them exact directions how to go under the ice. And while fascinating in and of its own right, another connecting data point to this is that when the KGB acquired these maps and this information from the Navy Department in Germany, that they had sent their own team to follow in this route that was given to the Germans. And this is what we found out quite recently. And this is breaking news here. Only Frank, the research assistant who passed it on to me and deciphered these KGB documents, said that the Russians went in under the same route that the Germans had followed, but were stopped by underwater craft that impeded them going any further. Because when the Germans went through, they were allowed to go through, but they had been given the directions. Wait for this. When they went to Tibet in 1938, they were looking for anything that would give them some kind of advantage in the foreseeable upcoming war. And they had made a connection with some of the inner earth civilizations below Tibet. And these inner earth civilizations gave them the directions to take their U-boats under the ice in Antarctica, in which they did. And there are quite a few data points that they succeeded in this, that they were going to Agartha, which they said was below Antarctica, not necessarily in the Arctic region or under Tibet. That's a different civilization, but it would appear that they were all interconnected.
Well, they called Velon, a Velon race, VLON.
Okay.
Collective race.
Very human-like, but very advanced too. And this would also correspond with Admiral Byrd's diary, flying into this giant cavity in the ice and going to what he called the domain of the Ariani. Ariani is very similar to Aryan and also ties in with Agartha, these inner earth civilizations, Shambhala, Shangri-La. We've heard.
You mentioned Nassim Haramein earlier.
Yes.
Did you? I mean, he is this whole thing about the black sun, point source black sun. I haven't seen Nassim for a good 10 years. He was educated in Switzerland, and my French colleague had them in Paris. But I'd be very keen to see if that more accurate energetics of the earth, of a donut, of a torsion thing.
Toroidal field.
Yeah.
You guys are amazing, all of you. I'm so happy to have you here, and this has been a wonderful discussion.
Hey, just wanted to finish a little bit
about what your thoughts are on where we're going. I'm sorry.
So I just wanted to finish with this this research assistant
Sure.
who has mapped out the exact route of the German U-boats going in under the ice, which of course was into Schwabenland, which goes right underneath some of those pre-existing West German bases. This is what I'm trying to say, is Germany never left the area, and they could still very well be involved with this underground, under ice civilization. Doesn't necessarily even need to be underground, because the polar plateau is 2 miles thick over the South Pole, and Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. So the propensity to have these under ice domes that are heated with geothermal activity not only is theorized, but it's already proven to exist down there. So what's under the ice in Antarctica, it's about as mysterious as the deepest depths of the ocean. They are truly the last unexplored areas of the world. And look, if you wanted to hide a civilization or a high-tech civilization, what better place if you wanted to be on land and not under the ocean than under the ice in Antarctica? So just to put a bookend on this, Frank, this research assistant, he's mapped it out. The Germans, of course, are very exact in their measurements and depths, and when you rise up into an under the ice lake, which the U-boat would sail across, and then they dip down again, go under some landmass, and then pop up again in this area that these U-boat maps from 1945 showed. So when Frank did those calculations, we found that where they were heading is very, very close to the geographic South Pole, which is a data point that connects with Admiral Byrd's diary, that too would be this huge hole about 50 miles from the South Pole. The NSA is all over the South Pole. They even have their own unmarked building at McMurdo Base, but at the South Pole, they also work to protect anything extraterrestrial, including this big hole under the ice. And this is where I have a divergence with Eric Hecker, because he says, well, I was there for a year. I never heard anything about it. Nor would you hear anything about it,
But
Eric.
Brad, he was a plumber there. Come on.
I know.
He was a plumber, so of course he would have access to the
me in
special
his
It's
interview.
all the drama on
I know.
Facebook with all that.
Yeah, you guys
Oh, I
are well
know.
aware, but maybe
I was on
Miles
a
needs to be
debate.
caught up
I
a little
know.
bit. Anyways, point being, there are now multiple data points saying that in this area is not only this giant hole, and there was a Russian researcher named Tazinski who said the same thing, that he also reviewed the KGB files and found.
Sorry, Brad, was that Vladimir Tzitsky?
Correct. Yes.
He's Austrian, and I haven't heard his name mentioned for quite a while.
And he is here in Los Angeles, and
He is still around.
Oh, he is still around. He's
Well,
not doing
pass
anything
on my
public
regards.
anymore, though. But my friend Robert Seffer, who does a lot of videos on Antarctica and the Vril and modern anthropology, hopefully we'll get him to the full disclosure now. I think he's about ready to start speaking publicly. But he was able to track down Kaczynski and get some more information out of him. But my point is, multiple data points now showing that there is a very high-tech, very advanced civilization that has been under the ice in Antarctica for quite a long time, maybe tied in with one of these motherships that went down, or utilizing the technology from the ship, but hidden down there, and then allied themselves with Nazi Germany, who built another base. So around the Schumacher Ponds areas where they built the Point 211 or Base 211. But then another base was called the New Berlin base. And this was the more advanced, the more city-like, not military base that they had also developed in the 1940s, which I'm coming to think was part of joining together with this high-tech civilization, this domain of the Ariani, which when Admiral Byrd flew his plane in there, the first thing that happened were these two UFOs with Nazi insignia on them, the flugel rods, escorted him in to the domain of the Ariani, where Admiral Byrd had a meeting with the master, who was human-like, but had telepathic abilities and seemed otherworldly to him, to take back a message. We don't like you guys playing with these nuclear bombs. But Admiral Byrd was still required to follow orders, and the main mission of Operation High Jump was to recover one of these UFOs. Mind you, this is 1946, 1947, when the Battle of High Jump took place, and it was a rout. It was a totally one-sided battle, and then Admiral Byrd is hightailing it out of there 2 months into the 6-month expedition. But before he got back to the U.S., when he was read the Riot Act, because he spoke to a journalist from El Mercurio newspaper in Chile, and he said, we would be confronted with an enemy that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds. And still to this day, I'm not aware that there are any craft that have been revealed that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds with some kind of free energy and 0 point to fuel those vehicles. So we're obviously dealing with high-tech civilization, with German backward engineering, with connection with...
No, Brad, I disagree with backward engineering. I'm inserting just very quickly. John Irwin, when John Irwin's 16 team went into a base in Jarabah, 2 huge saucers took off from the desert, and they were definitely involved with some kind of Bilderberger type meeting, and they got ancient data banks in that. That was their mission. That was 1959.
Yeah,
that's another story. But
well, what do you think? You know, Miles, you've mentioned before, I've listened to you talking about how they're creating all these super soldiers for
well, that's another story. I want to hear more from Brad while he's on.
Yeah, and I've only got a few more minutes, guys. I'm really sorry, but we got to check out of the hotel in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically it, you guys. And we should really pick this up another time, because there is still so much more to get into. But
well, Brad, one of the things very quickly is that the research is showing that the Earth's crust tilts, does 2.5 turns, and rotates round, and it will end up with Antarctica and Greenland on the equator. There's an Egyptian researcher he's called Syed Noah. He's been doing detailed work on all of the Egyptian artifacts, and cutting to the chase, the Egyptians have encoded in all the Egyptian stuff, all the artwork, that the crust does rotate round, and the sun will move. The only way you're going to know it's moved is the sun, instead of rising over there, is going to rise over here. And that is about to happen according to the Egyptian data that he's trying to get across. And just as he lives here, he's just hightailed it back to Egypt. And that is information which is encoded in everything. He was detailed getting his work done. So that's in the Egyptian. It's when the statue has a difference here on the left side and the right side. It shows that there's a rotation. All the statues, all of the artifacts have this. And there's 1,000 years. That shows that Antarctica could come up and be the next golden age when the ice melts. And they're all
How
waiting.
about we do a part 2 so we can focus on that? Because Brad he's got to check out of his room, and I don't want to hold him any longer.
Have a nice drive back up to northern Nevada, Brad.
Hey, I'm coming to your territory, Brian. We'll meet up again soon, guys. This has been
Brad.
Really fascinating conversation. Thanks for having me on. And yes, let's definitely do it again. Thanks for all your insights, guys. I really got a lot out of this. I hope your audience did too.
Yep, very good. Thank you for coming on.
Well, carry on. And well, just a quick little message. If anybody wants to know more about me and my upcoming conference schedule, including the full disclosure now in August, you can go to bradolson.com and click on my conference schedule. And to know more about my books is cccpublishing.com. And if they order books over my website, I'm able to sign copies for people and send them out that way. So
Thank you for that, Brad. I was going to ask you to share that.
All right.
Yeah.
Put it in the ticker tape down below.
And your information is in the comment section too. So people will be able to find you that way. You can find him on Facebook, go to his website. We appreciate you taking the time to come on with us, Brad. Have a safe trip back, and I'll be in touch for part 2. Okay.
Hey, sounds great, guys. Have
All
the
right, have a
great
good
rest
day.
of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye now.
Wow, that was you guys. Yeah, this has been
Excellent,
awesome.
very rewarding, and thank you very much, Ida and Brian.
Thank you.
Very
Miles.
honored to
Thank
be
you, Ida.
there. Thank you.
yes.
We'll
Thank
we'll
you both.
continue on
This
part
is
2.
good. Yeah.
And
Yeah, we're gonna
I
do
have
a
to
part
run
2.
myself. Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna do a part 2, and I'll make sure I get this not just in the live. And you guys could share it out if you want. Miles, thank you for coming on, taking the time. I always appreciate you. You know that. I want to tell you that though.
I was interrupted. Some bloody mad woman, talking away and
I know. I try not to interrupt,
having a
but it's
blonde
like
hair
y'all
day
keep going and going and going.
Oh, God, Brian, Jesus, God, oh, God.
And thank you
Yeah.
everyone else for being here as well in our
Yes.
audience. We
Sorry,
really
sorry,
appreciate
folks.
it.
That's because I've done an interview with Ida. It spaces some damn number, and it's a whole dedicated thing, introduction to Ida, and she did a really good thing a couple of days ago, and I'm going to put that up. I'm restricted on YouTube, so I'll
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna put
are?
it up. Yeah.
Damn.
Well, we're gonna do a part 2 and 3 because there's so
We're
much.
launching our own
Absolutely.
platform. We're gonna have our own
Yeah.
platform,
Okay.
Miles. We have a
Yep.
spot for you.
Well, absolutely, we do. All right, guys, have a great
Bye,
day.
guys.
This has been a fantastic.
Bye-bye.
Everybody
Good luck and
join.
God
Thank
bless
you.
to everybody.
Share it out.
Thank you, guys.
Good information. Have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see.